is a doctrine of war not to assume the enemy will not come, but rather to rely on one's readiness to meet him, not to presume that he will not attack, but rather to make one's self invincible. By Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Around the time that agrarian societies first developed, there was also introduced a new concept, ownership of territory. Those ancient skills that were so necessary to the hunt were now put to a different use, the defense or acquisition of territory. Archaeology shows that shortly after the invention of the grinding stone came the invention of defensive walls. After the invention of the plow, the sword was invented. War has been a part of civilization since its invention, and has plagued every generation since. There is a good chance that you or your children will have to deal with a war scenario. Those who can see the signs and make the effort to prepare ahead of time will have a better chance of surviving until peace comes again. Signs of impending war. Before war breaks out, there are several social changes that can act as indicators of approaching war. They are as follows. Social strife. Increase in angry demonstrations, strikes, marches, rallies, and public speeches arising from a full political spectrum. Every leader knows that regardless of the internal troubles, a powerful outside enemy will have the effect of uniting the people against a common threat and ennobling the ruling party. However, once the threat is removed, the internal squabbles will soon resume. Unemployment. Watch for a dramatic increase in the numbers of unemployed young males. The aggressive energies of young men need the outlets of hard work, sport, and the pursuit of females. When these traditional channels of energy are denied, the inevitable outcome is increased crime and social unrest. The ruling party may be tempted to diffuse a potential rebellion by creating a conflict to draw off extra labor. Dwindling resources. Scarcity of resources, especially food staples, metals, and petroleum products, lead to high prices that devalue paper currency and rapidly increase inflation. It is no accident that past world wars were preceded by economic recessions. In tribal societies, when resources start running thin, aggression was a means of driving away excess population into other unexploited areas. Now there is nowhere else to go, so we have to stand our ground and slug it out. Increased patriotism. Patriotism is the classical lure used to appeal to the traditional warrior ethic. Look for increased patriotic speeches, flag-waving, slogans, songs, marching bands, propaganda, portraits of great leaders and heroes of the homeland. Increased militarism. Initially, there are military recruitment campaigns, followed by conscription, followed by press gangs. Look for increasing government spending on the military, a greater military influence on foreign and domestic policies. Choosing an enemy. Before war can be declared, the government must designate an enemy. Traditional enemies are usually ethnic minorities within society or neighboring countries. When war becomes imminent, one or more of these enemies of the state will begin to receive greater attention, followed by a dehumanizing process. Dehumanizing potential enemies. In order to be able to kill another human being, you must first dehumanize that person. That is, you must view the other person as a symbol of something evil and subhuman, rather than a real, feeling human like yourself. In war, this is accomplished through propaganda. The enemy is never portrayed sitting down to dinner with a loving family, laughing and playing with children. Instead, they are portrayed as monsters through the use of slanderous propaganda and rumor campaigns. The truth is that soldiers of most nations are young, naive men that share the same human qualities and desires common to our species. Whenever a government depicts an entire nation or people as evil and warmongering, they are employing propaganda to convince the people to support an attack on that country. Surviving war. War is a human paradox, in that if one prepares for war, war will come. If one does not prepare for war, war still comes. From Gwyn Dyer, from the book War. War is nothing more than the crimes of rape and murder carried out on a massive scale. That young men and women are sent off to rape, rob, and murder other young men and women without gaining any of the profits or benefits thereof is clearly the work of psychopaths. The presence of war indicates that a society has become completely dysfunctional and that malignant minds are in charge of the machinery of the state. The first step to surviving war is to never join the armed forces. Wartime can bring some or all of the previously discussed man-made disasters. If the fighting takes place near your home, you may face a chemical, biological, or nuclear attack. If the fighting is abroad, you may nevertheless have to deal with martial law and a climate of corruption. Surviving war requires you to adapt the strategies for natural and man-made disasters for each possible disaster as they develop. As the signs of war point to its imminent arrival, be sure to refresh and redouble your survival skills and materiel. Add to your emergency supplies. Take extra first aid and wilderness survival training. Re-establish connections with friends, family, and neighbors to assist each other both for moral and resource support. Join or establish barter networks and try to find other sources for goods and services for the time when the traditional channels for such become scarce. Countries at war will use all available resources to keep their armies supplied. This means there is often not enough left for the civilian population. To prepare against such an eventuality, one should begin to hoard supplies as the signs of war become evident. Stockpile food, water, medicine, fuel, and seeds. Should the war last longer than your stores, you may have to supplement your nutritional needs by growing your own vegetables. Convert some of your wealth into gold or precious stones, or likely barter items such as cans of coffee, sugar, cartons of cigarettes, or shotgun shells. Hide these items in several locations or caches in the event that you or your family member is held for ransom. By revealing one of several hiding places to your extorters, you lose only a portion of your wealth. The best way to survive a war is to run, hide, and wait for it all to blow over. In order to do this, you need some way to travel, somewhere to hide, and you need to provide for all the requirements of daily living while you are waiting. Should you need to evacuate battle sites, you need to prepare travel documents and transportation. This could include everything from an extra car or boat to an extra pair of walking shoes. You will need to have stockpiled fuel stores to run the transportation, since you may not be able to buy these during wartime. Since the journey may take longer than expected, you need to carry food, water, extra clothing, temporary shelter materials, and medicine to last through the journey. Prepare a second safe place to run to should the fighting move close to where you are currently living. This could be a cabin or a farmhouse in the country, or another home in another city. Hiding in another city has some advantages. There are better communications, more places to hide, and greater resources. If you have limited funds, you can make an agreement with friends or relatives living in another part of the country that, should fighting occur near your home, you and your family could go stay with your relatives until it is safe to return, and vice versa. Also, construct a hiding place at your home or your safe house to store your supplies in. Both friendly and enemy troops passing through your area will send out scavenger teams looking for food and other supplies for the army. As with any group of armed men, you should be wary of having any dealings with them. Should the fighting worsen, and as the war lengthens, there is a greater likelihood of atrocities committed against civilian populations. The bombing, shelling, and gassing of civilians have been recorded in every major conflict since recorded history, as well as large-scale enslavement and imprisonment. In such cases, the last survival strategy may be to escape, evade, and go underground.